So this is, I'm going to title this part 2 of this discussion, mainly because it's a few days later and my frame of mind is a little bit different, and I don't know if I mean, I haven't listened back to what I discussed, um, but I don't know if I can match the tone or theme or whatever that I was talking about. So this is the same discussion, just a little bit. It's a few days later, so I can't naturally just continue on from where I left off because, like I said, I'm not in that frame of mind. Now, however, for those that have listened to part 1, you'll notice that it kind of just ends without any type of conclusion. Now, there's a reason for that, and then I'll get into something about the end of it that I'd like to discuss before getting into the rest of part 2. So, while I was recording, I uh, had asked, or I guess before recording, I'd asked my roommate if he was going to be home or not, or if he was going to stay at his girlfriend's for the evening, and he said he was going to stay downtown at his girlfriend's, so I thought I had all night to record. And so 20 minutes into recording the part 1, I see my roommate's truck pull into the, not into the driveway, but there's a part of, there's a spot outside that he can park at. So I see him park in his spot, and basically that was the end of any recording that I could do for that night, because I don't like to record when he's home. I actually don't like to record when anyone is around me. Um, and that's basically because I have the seeking suspicion that they would just be internally judging me anyways, and so I'd rather just have a free space to record in. And that's also why I'm pretty uh, flat with my delivery with a lot of things, and my voice doesn't raise up and down too much and whatnot, is because there are people that live in a suite underneath me. And it's just much easier to talk in one kind of tone than have so much inflection because they can pretty much hear almost everything that I say, depending on. I mean, they can't hear it clearly, but because it's an illegal suite underneath me, the house hasn't been designed and whatnot for noise control, and so they can hear us, and sometimes we can hear them. So that's why I don't necessarily have too much inflection in my voice, is because all I really want to do is get out the information, and I don't really feel secure when people are around me when I'm recording. Uh, so that's pretty much it. So my roommate came home, and I stopped recording, and I knew that I had to finish it. So now is probably a better time than any to finish this recording and get it up. Now, in the last episode, or I mean, in part 1, I ended with a mistake. And thinking over it the last couple of days, because this has yet to be released, and because I'm the only one that knows about it, nobody else knows about it, I had a decision to make. Can people forgive me for making a mistake and still see that everything that I've talked about is valid? That was the choice that I had to make. Did I trust people enough? And can I trust people enough that they can see past that one flaw, that one mistake that I made? That's not even a huge mistake. I just had a blank while thinking about an analogy of how our society, I think, could prosper better. And for some reason, I forgot that when you multiply negative by negative, it becomes a positive. And but thinking about it, right? Negative 2 times negative, like, I, I don't know. I mean, really what I would like to do is just forget, in general, that moment. But what does that say about me that I would want to hide that from you, right? Even though you would never know that that mistake occurred. What does that say about me if I want to hide that from you? Because really, when it comes down to it, what else would I be hiding from you, right? How much can you trust me if I have to hide my mistakes and flaws from you? So, I'm going to take the hit on this one. I'm not going to let it stand. I'm going to hope that you can forgive me. Because the idea behind the analogy was basically that, you know, negative times a negative would still equal a negative. Um, Negative times a positive would still equal a negative because there's negativity involved. And the only thing that would increase positivity would be multiplying something positive by something positive. That was kind of the analogy. And somehow I've completely forgotten simple math. So, so yeah, that was kind of a blunder, and I was kind of shaken up then, and then my roommate came home. So I thought, well, why not stop and record for another day? And so here's the other day. So why don't we continue? Why don't we move on? Because I don't exactly remember where I left off, but I know that I didn't get a lot or anything really out. So this discussion is titled "Being Scared," and really what it's about is being scared to be ourselves. And really, it has nothing to do with you. It's me being scared of being me and allowing the world to know who I am. Because all of the information that I receive from, you know, I have no clue where I get it from the ethers that are all around us, points towards one thing, that I am a being on this planet that is meant to help this planet change, and change for the better. And there are a few ways that we're going to do this, and they all actually have to work together. And it is on a physical level where we have to pretty much start from scratch with civilization. We have to get rid of governments, we have to get rid of the monetary system, and anything else that would keep human beings in slavery. And we have to get rid of it on this level. Then there's the mental level of human beings, where from birth we go through trauma. And we never relieve ourselves of that trauma. And so we continuously fall back, even through lifetimes. We fall back into bad habits and never really, not necessarily learn the lesson that's been applied to the journey, but we haven't, one second, we haven't been able to get past and let go of the trauma that's associated with our past. And it could be for past lives. And there's ways to overcome past life trauma. I guarantee you that. I know of at least one way. And I'm sure there's others. And one of my goals on this planet is to help people get over current life trauma. And I think for the most part, people see our current life trauma as that only the extreme people need to recover from it. When in reality, everybody on this planet, I don't care who you are, this includes me and everybody that I know, has some form of trauma going on in their lives right now. And the reason why I say that is because even if you are 99% honest with people, there's still that 1% that you hold back from other people. And that's kind of where trauma lives, in holding back of ourselves. If you think about a military vet who, although most people would think that their trauma starts when they have their first kill or they see action for their first time and they see all the destruction around them. But really, the trauma starts with, in the military, the moment that training begins. And training begins in the military probably from the moment that enrollment happens. The moment that they start being brainwashed. And brainwashing is where the trauma begins for most people. Actually, that's not true. Trauma begins for most people the moment that you are ejected out of your mother's body and pushed into this world and you open your eyes and you're just like, oh, fuck me, I'm back in this place again. And although as a baby you don't necessarily remember your birth, I really don't think anyone does. That's my assessment on it, is that the spirit recognizes that we are back in a place that we probably don't want to be. Because, for the most part, we've never left society better than when we came in. And as much as people will disagree with me, because we've had technological advances and advances in, we beat sporting records all the time and whatnot. But we are not, as every generation passes on, we are not leaving this planet better than the generation that lived on it before. And although you may not agree with me, that is the truth. The monetary system, along with governments and just the way that people think, is destroying this planet as we go. We are, and I'm part of the problem on this end, we are mutilating animals for food, which we don't necessarily need. Marketing is brainwashing people to consume. We have a continent of garbage in the Pacific Ocean that wasn't there 2,000 years ago. It wasn't there probably 100 years ago. We're the cause of so much destruction on this planet. And that's mostly because of two things. One, we've never gotten over trauma, even from birth. And two, we've forgotten that we are of this planet, or at least these bodies are. And it's possible that our spirit is too. Well, not, I think some of our spirits have been able to move on, and that's an entirely different discussion altogether. But for the most part, a lot of what goes on this planet is destructive. And in order to sustain life, it cannot be destructive. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm on this planet. And it's not necessarily to change it in my generation. What it is to leave behind breadcrumbs, to plant seeds in younger generations. Because the older generation, really what they need to do is release their trauma so that perhaps they don't have to come back in another lifetime. And then if they do choose to come back, they'll come back basically trauma and karma free and can help. And it is my hope that with my writing and my words, along with numerous other people, I'm not saying I'm the only one, but along with numerous other people, we will help plant seeds in the younger generation so that they will look upon this world as something that they will cherish and will want to allow it to get back to its former glory before we decided to destroy everything. And the problem with that is that, like I said before, it's on a few different planes. The first one is the physical plane with the monetary system and governance and whatever else crappy thing you can think of that man has created on this planet to control one another and to destroy it. The second one is our battle within, with trauma, etc. And then the third one is recognizing that we're the combination of spirit and ego, which is the soul, and to find a way to allow the spirit to take control over the ego, because right now the ego has control of our spirit, and from there then we'll realize how connected we actually are with one another, and we will want to help one another. So there's obviously a lot more to it than just that, but that is why I am here. And what frustrates me a lot is that I cannot prove that to other people. I cannot just walk up to people and say, no, I'm here to help, let's get going. That's not how it works. There's no way that I can prove any of this. And the problem is that we live in a society where proof is king. That is why there's atheism on this planet, is because no one can prove one way or another that spirit exists. Spirit actually only exists, well, spirit always exists, but you can only feel it. You can't even really necessarily see it, but you can feel it when you believe in it. And because of science, people, have come to the conclusion that what people are actually feeling is just a placebo effect. And there's no way really to argue that. It's possible that it is a placebo effect. It's possible that spirit doesn't exist at all, and that we're just, in a sense, wasting our time away on this planet killing one another for no purpose at all. So it's because kind of that I believe that a spirit is existing within us, and that the body is controlled by the ego, which would mean that, and the ego's not this nasty, terrible thing that most people think of. There's some really awful things that it does, but there's some amazing things that it does. It handles our automatic system. Imagine if you had to control your breathing 24/7. You had to remember to take a breath in, take a breath out. Take a breath in, take a breath out. Inhale, exhale, 24/7, 365 for the rest of your life. That you had to consciously be aware that you had to take a breath in and a breath out every second. Let me ask you this. What other tasks do you think you could do while also having to remember to breathe? You'd have to, could you then also, while breathing, tell your body how to walk? To tell all your cells to work together? To tell your bladder to hold urine and whatnot? Like, that's the ego. The ego is running your body. It is kind of working with you. But the thing is because we don't believe that spirit exists for the most part. So many people have a problem believing that spirit exists and believing that or understanding that the spirit and the ego are combined into this shell kind of, I don't want to say egg-like contraption, but whatever it is, and is inserted into the body, and it's light. It's not necessarily something physical that you can find. It's light. And, sorry, because we fail to recognize that we are spirit, first and foremost, all of us, consciousness and subconscious, superconscious, all of those things, derive more from spirit than ego. Now, ego has a connection with consciousness. It doesn't necessarily, though, have anything to do with the subconscious and superconscious and higher consciousness at all. It only exists it only exists on planets with duality, which is Earth. And that's what the soul is. The soul is, to me, the key of the soul, the combination of spirit and ego, is for us to recognize that we're spirit and take control back from the ego and get out of bondage that way. Because really what has happened is because we don't believe in spirit, the ego's kind of said, okay, well, I will take control of everything. How we think, act, treat one another, for the most part, is coming from the ego. And the ego's job is to, at least in my mind, in my point of view, the ego's job is to make us forget where we've come from. That is the key to it. Because, think about it this way. If we remembered where we come from, like, think about a vacation that you go on. And you go to, even if it's just a lazy vacation where you go to sunny Mexico, how long do you think you could vacation for without wanting to go home? A week? 2 weeks? A month? I'm sure that at some point you will want to go home. Now, imagine if the moment that you got off the plane in Mexico, some sort of veil went over you. Maybe you got, inserted with a chip, or you drank a concoction or whatever it was, or you got hit by a mist. It doesn't really matter. And you got off the plane and you forgot that you had a home. would you ever really want to leave Mexico? Probably, you'd probably want to go travel other places, but you'd probably then start to consider Mexico as your home. Because you wouldn't remember that you had another place, that you had a different life before this one. That mist, or fog, or drink, or chip, or whatever it is that made you forget that you had a home is the equivalency of the ego within us. That's its job. Its job is to make us forget that we are spirit. Because if we remember that we're spirit, a lot of the beings on this planet are only going to want to go home. And there are negative connotations for this. And it's not in this video that I need to explain it. All I really need to explain is the fact that spirit exists. It is on this planet in a container with the ego, and right now, because people don't believe the ego exists, or not that the ego exists, that the spirit exists, the ego has taken control. And what we need to do is remember that we're spirit. Remember that everything in this universe and beyond it is spirituality. Until I or somebody else can figure out that there's more, which there probably is. We're just cracking the surface with everything. But what we need to do is take back our freedom from the ego. Because the ego, just like what is happening in the external world, offers us security. Not freedom. And that's something that people need to come to grips with too. We have traded our freedom for security. And I believe that's the beginning of a quote by, or at least a paraphrasing of a quote by Benjamin Franklin. Because when we trade freedom for security, we pretty much deserve neither. When we say that we can't look after ourselves, so we need a parent to look after us, we don't have freedom. And I understand that some people will say, well, the system that you want to create, because I'll get into that a little bit in future discussions. I'll get into what I foresee, at least on from my end, what I think a new system, a better system could look like. And there we go. Sorry, I just had to crack a bone in my body. Oh, that's nice. And I've lost my train of thought. I am sorry. Talking about freedom. And they would think that unconditional giving might be a sign of slavery. And in a roundabout, very kind of etherical way, it is. Because what you've surrendered to, what you've become a slave to, is the whole. Is everybody. Is making sure that not only you survive, but the person to the right and left of you, the person in front and behind you, also survive. And if everybody, every single person on this planet made sure that those that surrounded them had the ability to survive, eventually we'd start to live again. And eventually, with that mindset, we would actually thrive. Because we would make sure that as quality of life improved, that quality of life would improve for everybody. And the thing is that you can't have that. You cannot have everybody on this planet having an amazing quality of life if they're stuck in the monetary system. Because the monetary system is not set up so that everybody does well. If let's say everyone starts to live in abundance, what happens to the value of money? It either depreciates to absolutely nothing, and therefore it's unneeded, or it continues to inflate so that those that have $1 million is the equivalency of what those have of $30,000 now, because there will be trillionaires and perhaps even and higher, and the world debt will probably get up to a Google, and not the search engine Google, but the number Google. Like I really wish people could understand that the way that our world is currently operating, there's no way that we're ever going to get out of debt from world banks. We have to come together as people and just say no. Just say, we are no longer slaves to your system. We are taking this land as ours. We thank you. And the thing is that first we don't take. We ask. But at some point, if that asking gets refused, we will have to take. And that probably won't happen in my lifetime, because in this lifetime, I'm pretty sure I'm only here to lay the groundwork. But if I come back in another lifetime, it is my hopes that I'm ready to take this on. Like the next level on. Not this. I'm ready to take whatever's going on now on. And I really hope that other people begin to really take it on seriously too. Because that's, at least that's who I am. That's my purpose on this planet, is to begin this spiritual evolution, to start planting seeds in people so that they too can plant seeds in future generations so that one day everybody just decides to say no. It is okay to say no, as long as you're saying no to a system that is not set up to support you. And it's not set up to support the whole. And it kind of reminds me of I think it's a poem, but I'm not absolutely certain if it's a poem or just a piece of writing. But it's about, I believe it's about World War II. And it's, no, I'm trying to find it. So just give me a, I think it's, I don't know who the author is, but it's the one of, like First They Came. So let me, um, I'm going to see if I can find it here. I'm sorry. Let me see if this is, and maybe this is it. I don't know. If this isn't it and somebody else knows poem. I believe it's by Pastor Martin Niemöller. I don't know if I said that right. It's German. Uh, Here's how it goes. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I want that to hit home for a second, because in a moment I'm going to also read a second poem by an unknown monk. At least that's what's attributed to the poem. But I want this to sink in for a second. I want you to really think about what this means. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. How many times have people been accosted on this planet and we've done nothing because we don't align with that group? History repeats itself because we don't realize that we can make the change. We don't have to repeat history. But when history begins to repeat itself, it is up to us to say no. That we're not going to propagate history again. So when they come for people, when they come for our people, because something that we need to really get into our heads, which will happen more when science, or not, sorry, when trauma goes away, when we combine science and spirituality together. When we start to deal with who we are and understand that we are all beings of the same material, from the same place above us. And I'm not talking about heaven. It's very possible that heaven exists. But what heaven really is a holding bay that is filled with bright and fluffy colors for everyone to look at, to mask them of the idea that they are going to return back to this place. Because they have trauma and karma. And they go to this holding bay where they can't pollute the rest of the universe. And they can't spread the parasite that is within us out in the rest of the universe, destroying the universe. We, let me collect my thoughts again. We're all one. The sooner we understand that not only are we all one on this planet, and I'm talking about humans, animals, molecules in the air, trees, plants, the grass, anything and everything. If it's on this planet, it is one. The ego, of course, wants us to believe that we are separate from everything else. It wants us to forget where we come from. Our goal should be to remember where we come from, but also understand that we have a purpose on this planet, and that is what should anchor us. The ego should no longer anchor us. It should be us. That is what grounding is. Grounding is now our choice to stay on this planet to do something good. That is what I've decided to do, and I hope that more people decide to do the same thing. Now, I mentioned another poem, and it goes like this. So this is attributed to an unknown monk. And when it loads up, hold on. Uh, it's the first link that was available to me. So the poem is called "I Wanted to Change the World." When I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found it was difficult to change the world, so I tried to change my nation. When I found I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. I couldn't change the town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family. Now, as an old man, I realize the only thing I can change is myself. And suddenly I realized that if long ago I'd changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town. Their input could have changed the nation. And I could, indeed, have changed the world. It is within us, ourselves, when we shed ourselves, not shed completely, but in a sense, overtake our ego, which means shedding ourselves of the trauma, the layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of trauma that have built up, kind of like layers of paint on a wall or layers of wallpaper on a wall or layers of cement on the roads. They've just built up over time. And we need to get back down to that surface so that we can place the spirit above the ego, choose not to go home, but to stay on this planet and help it get back to being healthy again. Because even in, let's just consider, after the year 2000, in the last 2,000 years, we have completely destroyed this place. And now it's time for us to change that. And it's time for people like me and others like me to start, one, working on ourselves, working within, ridding ourselves of as much trauma as possible, so that we can then go out and help other people release their trauma, help them understand that there's so much more to existence than what the monetary system has allowed us to believe. And once we can start doing that, we will start building a family unit that can then create a town. And that town can create a nation. And that nation will then be able to change the world. I may be at the precipice of this, at the start. And my job is to put this information in the hands of people that will do something with it in the future. Because me, the being that is Mike, not the being, but the body that is Mike, and the being, because when I come back here, I'll go under the veil again of the ego, if I ever come back, won't remember this.